Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Uninsured Ankles Basketball Podcast. I am Josh Barton. Nick Swanson is pulling a Joel Embiid on us again. That makes me Andre Drummond. With me, as always, is Jordan Stratton and Haley Everett. Jordan, what Philadelphia 76er are you, and why is it Jared McCain?
It's because when I hit three-pointers in my men's league games, I do TikTok dances.
So, where can we find you on TikTok for all of the desirable content?
I actually do not have a TikTok other than the uninsured ankles TikTok, which
Follow
is
us on TikTok.
yeah, which is technically live, but is a little bare in terms of content. Go to the Instagram if you want to actually see our content.
We'll have a
Nice
we'll have a
plug.
chat with the TikTok admin after this. Haley, my question for you. Are we still drinking the Grizzlies Kool-Aid, and why should we stop sharing with Jordan?
Mostly because there's enough to go around. We just don't accept West Coasters who shade Desmond Bain for an hour and a half on a podcast, and he didn't never apologize. So he can stay over there on the West Coast and not drink the Kool-Aid, and we'll have it to ourselves.
So I haven't really checked the standings lately, but would you care to inform the audience of where the Grizzlies are in the standings in the tumultuous, tough, ultra-competitive Western Conference?
I think they're
Dramatic
fifth
pause.
right now, aren't they?
No, they're second.
Oh, they really?
Uh,
At
They're
well,
16
second.
and
tied
8?
They're
tied
tied for
second with the
second.
Dallas.
Yep.
Wow.
Tied second with Dallas?
At 16 and 8. That since when has 16 and 8 been two in a conference at this point of the season? That's pretty crazy. Tells you
That's
how
cra
stacked the West is.
Also
For
crazy
sure.
that Houston's right there at 15 and 8.
I mean, yeah, Houston was number 2 for like a whole 4 days.
Meanwhile, the Eastern Conference is they'll come up a bunch today, but aside from Boston and Cleveland, a little bit of New York, maybe not too
Some
much to
meager
write home about.
rations.
That's right. Haley, you want to explain to us why, as a diehard Hawks fan, you're wearing a Pistons hat tonight?
Yeah, I owe our good friend Nico Swanson, our loving host who's not with us tonight. I lost a bet. This is almost a month ago now, but the Pistons and Hawks were playing, and we made a bet that whichever team lost that game, the fan of the opposing team would have to wear some sort of paraphernalia. I don't think Nick owns any Hawks gear, but to be fair, when the bet was made, we were down 20 and we only lost by one. But, I do own a Pistons hat because I love Josh Smith, and Josh Smith went to the Pistons after his Hawks tenure, and I became a somewhat faux Pistons fan, the way that Josh is a Mavs fan, aka a Lucas stan. Anyhow,
I may have to procure a Hawks hat after the atrocious implosion that occurred in Atlanta with the Lakers a couple nights ago.
it was really like a game of who wanted to lose the least. Like the Hawks had a chance to win, blew it. The Lakers had a chance to win, blew it, and then Trey hits a silly three,
It,
and we won.
I thought I thought we were toast when it came down to a last shot in regulation because at that point it was tie game with what like 20 seconds left and you guys had the ball and I don't even remember it was a garbage shot that y'all got out
It
of
was
that
ter
possession.
it was terrible. I don't remember who was guarding Trey, but he blocked. It was literally just like a standstill three-pointer. Trey did nothing, dribbled in place for 20 seconds, and
And then got blocked.
yeah, that's not the first time that's happened this year. For what it's worth, I don't know what happens to Quinn. He like has great ATOs, great out of bounds plays, like all the time, and then it's like, oh, you want to win a game? How about we're just ISO Trey from 30 feet away from the hash mark? And yeah,
Yeah, that unfortunately feels very similar to watching Lakers end of game scenarios as the ball still, for whatever reason, is in Bron's hands when it comes to those situations. When they have a clearly better player by the name of Anthony Davis on their roster at this point in their careers. And I don't think AD has had a clutch shot attempt that wasn't passed to him from LeBron in the last 5 to 10 games.
All right, well, that's enough Lakers talk for today. You got it out of your system, Jordan. All right, first thing on the docket today, gentlemen. We're about a quarter of the way into the season. It's time to start thinking about All Star and specifically first time All Stars. So we have five All Star sleepers, shall we say, and we are going to be rating them on a sleep scale. This little bit was inspired by Kendrick Perkins a couple years ago, saying he was sleeping with a box fan, the AC on 60 on the Minnesota Timberwolves. First one, Jordan, Victor Wembanyama, first time All Star, or should the Spurs just cut him?
Look, I am I'm not a Wemby fan in the sense that ESPN is a Wemby fan. I think they are crowning him the next heir to the throne as LeBron is on his way out, and I feel like it's far too soon. He's averaging like 23 and 10, which there are another like 10 or 15 guys in the NBA doing that exact same thing right now, and you know, we're not falling all over ourselves to give them their keys to the ignition of the NBA. I just feel like he's overrated right now. He does some ridiculous things, but he is not everything that he's cracked up to be. He'll be a first-time All-Star this year. The fan vote is going to make him start. We all know that the fan vote's going to make him start, just like LaMelo Ball is going to start in the East.
100%.
But the fact of the matter is, AD and Joker are performing better than Wemby consistently. He should be coming off the bench, but there are no other centers in the West that are performing to the same level when you take into account his stocks. So, yes, he will be a first-time All-Star because of how ESPN just loves him and the fans think he's the next biggest thing on the planet. He is pretty big, let's be fair.
Wemby's obviously going to start. He's probably going to be in the top three in the fan vote. Fan vote counts for only a portion of it, but the coaches and players, everyone loves Wemby except for apparently Jordan. So thanks for taking a bit and turning it into actual full discussion. Uh, before we jump into the actual guys we're going to talk about, I did want to take a minute and just mention the two Magic guys, or the one Magic guy, our guy, Franz Wagner. Unfortunate injury this past weekend. Wild that the two cornerstones of the Magic both suffered torn obliques. I haven't been paying attention too much to the injury history of the league in my lifetime, but I don't really remember guys having torn obliques. So for the two cornerstones of your franchise to suffer torn obliques, I'm sure the Magic coaching staff and owners are having a word with their strength and conditioning coaches. But just to run through Franz's numbers real quick, 24 and 5 overall, but with Powell out, 26, 6 and 6. Big clutch play against a certain team from Los Angeles that we mentioned last time, I believe. We won't bring that up again out of compassion to those parties interested in that game. But I think Franz is going to be would be a strong candidate as a first time All Star. I think unfortunately he's probably going to miss too many games and fall out of contention. It's interesting to see who on the Magic's going to elevate their game and be in contention for a first time All Star. Maybe Gogo Batadze. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, nobody else will be in contention. Thanks for trying.
They probably will not win a game until Franz or Paulo comes back,
I I mean, except against the Wizards.
or the Hawks.
First guy we have on our actual list, Evan Mobley, of the league best Cleveland Cavaliers. He is averaging 18-9 and nearly 3 assists. He's also averaging 2.5 stocks. Great defensive player. Um, Cleveland's definitely going to get two All-Stars, in my opinion. Mitchell's a lock for sure. I will interested to see what y'all think about Garland. But in terms of Mobley, great time to talk about him. He had a career high 41 points last night. In terms of the locks in the East, for forwards, I have Giannis, Tatum, Brown, and Cat. That leaves some room for a guy like Mobley. What do y'all think? Are you sleeping on Mobley as a first time All Star?
I'm wide awake on Mobley. I think that if the Cleveland keeps performing the way that they are, it's going to be hard not to put three in, and he's the
Mm-hmm.
clear third behind, or along with Garland. I think it's also going to be hard not to put Garland in because he's like 20 and 7 or 8 assists,
Mm-hmm.
and he's been really good. Um, I so. And Mobley's had a lot of narrative behind him this year too, which, as we all know, that's going to help his across the league votes from coaches and um, staff. Or it's just coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
From coaches, but it's going to be hard not to include him if they keep like being clearly the first in the East. If they go into the All-Star break with 6, 7 losses, like yeah, you're going to have to put three guys from Cleveland in there.
Yeah, I'd say I think as the season got started, I just drank like 2 Celsiuses on Evan Mobley right out of the gate. And I think I'm having an issue now where my Celsiuses are starting to wear off. And I think part of that comes with the fact that now that the winning streak is over and they've lost a few of their last, I mean, I think they've lost 3 of their last 5. And we've started to see some of the holes, a couple of the inconsistencies where, the other team's hanging around when they probably shouldn't be, or I mean, on their winning streak, they had a couple games where they got down by 15 plus points and ended up coming back and
Mm-hmm.
winning. They've had a couple of those games now where they've gotten down early and haven't come back. An example of that was the game that they just finished against the Miami Heat. They got down by 10, 15 points and clawed it back to, 5 or 6 points, but couldn't get over the hump. Well, and part of that probably was because Evan Mobley is out with a sprained ankle. But uh, that being said, the initial allure is starting to wear off because I think we have seen that a little bit where there's been a few games where he's had like 10 and 6. And then there's been a few games where he's had like 30 points and 15 rebounds or 41 points and 10 rebounds. And that's the same knock I just gave to Wemby a second ago is that it's not consistent. And you need to have that consistency to me for me to be really chomping at the bit in terms of sleepiness on your pick. So I'm hitting a bit of the post caffeine crash on Evan Mobley, and we'll see if the Cavs can kind of bounce back from this skid.
So I historically have not been an Evan Mobley guy. Y'all know that. I talked about it when we did our big Cavs discussion on our last pod. Go check that out if you haven't listened to that. Um, he doesn't have exactly what I would call touch. If Nikola Jokic is the poster child of touch, Evan Mobley is the middle schooler compared to that.
So like
With
if
that,
if we had a scale from Joker to Kwame
Ben
Brown,
Simmons.
where does he fit in that
Um,
scale?
Unfortunately, I would put Mr. Mobley closer on the Kwame Brown scale. I do like this year that he's shooting more. He's definitely more aggressive. Haley did a great rundown of all the changes they made on that pod. Again, go check that out if you haven't listened to it. So I won't belabor the point. He's being more aggressive. He is doing the thing that all bigs should, and when he gets a mismatch, he's punishing them. And you don't need touch when you're shooting layups and dunks. That's it's pretty easy to make those go in without touch. His floor game is pretty good. He's a good passer, can handle the ball. I'm not the biggest fan of him. However, in terms of his all-star selection, I think he's pretty close to being a lock. Cavs record's working in his favor. The Eastern Conference's dearth of talent is also working in his favor. Some guys have to get in. If Porzingis was healthy, he'd probably get in this year, but he just started back playing. There's plenty of guys out. So I think, if I'm on my scale of sleepiness, I just drank my cup of coffee. I'm wired. I'm ready to go. I'm wide awake on Evan Mobley as an all-star. As Evan Mobley is a fan, I might be a little drowsy, possibly even taking a nap on him. But as a first time All Star, I'm pretty confident in Evan Mobley getting in. Our second guy on the list is Haley's guy, Cade Cunningham, averaging 25 and 7. The Pistons are 10 and 15. Great record, great record. But compared to last year's 14 and 68 record, things are definitely looking up in the Motor City. Another guy who's coming in off a hot streak had a triple double against the Knicks yesterday. In terms of his competition in the East, my locks for guards, Brunson, I already mentioned Mitchell. I think Trey's also a lock. Probably Dame on reputation. Coaches love putting those established guys in there. Dame's been playing pretty well. I think Garland's probably a lock. So we're starting to run out of space in the Eastern Conference for guards. But Haley, as the Cade apologist of the group, where are you sleeping on Cade Cunningham as a first time All Star?
No, I just had my shot of espresso on Cade for an all-star. The boy is hooping this year. I love what Cade's doing. I think if I remember correctly, he's had like five of the last six games. He's had 10 plus assists, multiple triple doubles in that stretch. Uh, he's he's the thing that's making Detroit run. Obviously, the coaching staff change is helping a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
without Cade, that team is not good at all.
Dog
And right
water.
now they're on, yeah, yeah, big old bowl of dog water. But right now they're on the cusp of the play-in. I do
Mm-hmm.
think that they'll probably make the play-in the long run. I don't know that Philly, based on their health history, will actually get there. And I think either Chicago or Brooklyn's going to fall out of contention pretty quickly. But yeah, I like what Cade is doing a lot. And I think again he's also got some of that reputation behind him because he was number one overall pick, and he's it's not like he's been bad. He's just had some poor injury luck and some bad coaching luck. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I believe Cade is a lock to get in. I thought that he and Franz were for sure going to be first time All-Stars again. Rip Franz's All-Star opportunity unless he can get healthy quickly. But yeah, I think Cade, I'd lock him in as an All-Star this year.
I think
Jordan.
probably the issue that I'm going to run into putting him in is similar. I mean, Josh brought up at the beginning that you've got a lot of guys that ha are historical locks. Brunson will get one because he's been playing really well. I mean, we're saying Cat's going to get one, and Brunson's been the number one on that team. If we're
Mm-hmm.
being realistic, Mitchell's going to get one because the Cavs are at the place where they are in the standings. If we're being honest, he hasn't even played to like a starter level compared to some of the other guys in the East, but he's going to get it because of their position. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Trey better get one this year. Golly, he's been snubbed
Yes.
too many times, and this is his best statistical season to date, so he better get in. I don't know if Dame gets in. He probably does, and he's putting up better numbers than Cade is. And then, like I mentioned before, I don't think there's any way that LaMelo doesn't start.
Injuries
He's
might be the issue.
if he doesn't play enough games, yes, but if he does, he's gonna start, and because the fan vote will be overwhelmingly in his favor. He's just one of those guys that everyone my age and younger loves, and he's just gonna rack up a bunch of votes. because those are the people that are really engaged in the fan vote anyway. So if LaMelo plays enough games, then Cade doesn't make it. If LaMelo doesn't play enough games and gets snubbed, then Cade might be the one to fill in that spot. So I'm groggy on Cade because I have really enjoyed watching him this year, and like Haley said, he's the only reason that the Pistons are winning ball games. Um, and we talked about that in our podcast before the season even started, that unless
Yeah.
Cade was a, all NBA selection, the Pistons were going to be trash. And he's playing like an all NBA guy, and the Pistons are having a rebound year. So got to tip your cap to him. I think some of those historical guys might get a nod and push him out, especially if LaMelo gets the starting spot. But you got to. I'm an enjoyer. I'm a fan. I feel kind of the inverse to Josh with Evan Mobley, where I'm a big fan of Cade's. I'm just worried that some of the guys in the East might end up pushing him to that first snub position.
Yeah, I echo a lot of those sentiments. I'm a big Cade guy myself. I don't particularly like the Luca comp, not just because I'm a Luca stan, but also because he's not quite Luca. He doesn't shoot it the way that Luca does. He doesn't create it at the level that Luca does. But he's a really good player. When they played the Celtics this past week, he had a terrible first half and Biggerstaff benched him. He think he played 6 minutes and didn't play the rest of the first half, and the Pistons got down by 20. And then he comes back and they brought it, made it a close game, made us squeeze it out. But I like Cade. The shooting, like I said, he doesn't create space on his jumper the way Luca does, but he's a pretty good catch and shoot jump shooter. He's definitely not, a scrub when it comes to that. I do think the competition in the East is going to be tough. And, you know, the coaches aren't looking to reward a Detroit Piston the same way they are maybe with a guy like Garland or even a guy like Derek White, who we don't have on our list. I felt like I might be accused of some homerism if I included him on the list. Uh,
Correct.
they aggressively shake their heads. But I think there's a lot more competition for the guard position, like Jordan just said. So big K guy, but my alarm's gone off. But I'm staying in the bed. I'm waiting for the second alarm to get off. I'm still a little sleepy, trying to get some extra few minutes of rest. Hoping he gets in, but also waiting for that second alarm and just resting a little bit.
A couple
Yeah, go ahead.
tidbits on Cade. If you want to watch some fun highlights of Cade, he navigates a pick and roll really
Mm,
well and d can do like kind of all the things you would want. He knows how to get into a jumper out of it. He knows how to find the roll man out of it. He knows how to throw the skip pass out of it. He knows how to get downhill. But he has one of the best spin moves in the league. He's like
mm,
spinning from the free throw line to the the hoop like in a split second, and it that is one of like it feels like a signature move for him because I've seen him do it so frequently, but it's really smooth and actually creates space, and not everybody has like they can do a spin move, but it might not actually create space. Anyways, just some more Cadeisms for you guys.
yeah, Kate also dunked on Derek White in that Celtics game, pretty nastily, which we can say is another reason why D White got bumped from this list.
Yeah, that might be just foreshadowing the results of the All-Star voting.
It'll be interesting to see, and Jordan mentioned this, but it'll just be interesting to see with all the injuries, specifically to a guy like LaMelo. If LaMelo's played enough games, he's getting in. It's just a matter of like, is he going to be healthy enough to play the game, and how many injury reserves are we getting in? Because historically, if y'all remember, Goran Dragic was a one-time All-Star with the Miami Heat as like the 12th injury replacement one year. So you never know how that can happen. Third on the list, bouncing out to the Western Conference, is Alperen Şengün. He's kind of like Mobley, in my opinion. His case is a lot based on his team. As we talked about, the Rockets top five team in the Western Conference. They were at two as recent as a couple days ago. He's putting up 19, 10, 5, turned himself into a defensive player, 2 stocks a game. He also grew 2 inches over the summer, which is wild because he's like 23 years old. But he's a solid defensive player now. Not Rudy Gobert. Although again, is Rudy Gobert a defensive player? That's a conversation for another day. But and Jordan already mentioned his competition in the front court. When he's talking about Wemby, there's obviously Wemby because Wemby's getting in. LeBron's getting in. LeBron's LeBron's LeBron James. There's no world in which he doesn't make the All-Star game. So lock him in as a starter. Nikola Jokic is just playing the most ridiculous basketball of the last 30 years, potentially. So he's a lock. Anthony Davis is a lock. Kevin Durant, if he stays healthy, he's a lock. So that's already, 5 forward front court positions. I think Houston has to have a representative. My question kind of to you and in the broader scale of, are we sleeping on Alperen Şengün as a first time starter, first time all-star, is if it's not Şengün, who would be the Houston all-star representative? Because I don't know if I have a good answer. Jordan, you're our Western Conference guru.
I think it's got to be Şengün, and I think a part of that is what I talked about before, inconsistency, and that we've seen flashes from their other guys. There was a
Mm.
a stretch where Jalen Green was doing some dastardly deeds and put up 30 in like 3 of 4 games and was shooting at a high clip from three, but he's come back down to earth and he's averaging like 13 points over his last 5 or 6 games. And then Fred VanVleet had a couple games where, I mean, he just had the game against OKC from last
Ooh.
week where he put up like 38 or 39 or something like that and had the insane dagger three with 40 seconds left to put him up 6 or whatever. And so he's had a couple games like that where he's put up numbers. But I think Şengün ends up being the most consistent player on the Rockets. He's leading their team in points at 19 a game. He's leading their team in rebounds. He's, like Josh said, a better defender than he was last year. I still wouldn't call him a defensive stopper or anything, but he's not a negative on the defensive end anymore. And he's got a little bit of that mini Joker in him. He's making a lot of those nice passes out of the post and making plays happen. So, if anybody on that roster deserves to get one, it's him, uh, or Udoka. Like let's be real. I think the roster makeup has not changed that much, and that the fact that they've all of a sudden gone from like the worst team in the Western Conference to uh a top three team in the Western Conference, arguably. I think that says more about the job that he's done than anything about the specific players. But
Yeah.
Şengün has been really good this year, and I think the lack of other stardom in the for forward center spots is gonna lead to him snagging one of those reserve spots.
Yep, that's I think that if somebody from the Rockets gets in, it'll be him. I do think somebody from the Rockets should get in. I also
Hmm.
think that, like, as far as his all-star bid, I'm like mildly sleepy on it. I think that they just have to put somebody in from that team. And
Yeah.
Şengün, in my opinion, would be the right one. He is the most well-rounded player. He's a more of a stat sheet filler than the other options. And as Jordan said, it's really Ime's doing. Like that team is, for the most part, pretty much the same, and they've been more healthy this year than they have in past years. They finally have Tari Eason, and they've got the Thompson twin, who are, gosh, those dudes are nightmares. But a ton of fun. But in all reality, like, the Houston success isn't necessarily specific to Şengün or Fred VanVleet or Jalen, but it's got to be one of those three, just because they're the
Hmm.
ones with the biggest numbers. But yeah, I think it'd be Şengün. But I do think he's gonna have a tough chance getting in because of the other names that we've got to compete with. So
Yeah. It's crazy the difference between the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. In the East, it's like, well, somebody's got to get in. In the West, it's like, well, there's 50 guys we can choose from. Jordan, how sleepy are you on Şengün? I don't know if I heard you say that.
I gotta say that I'm, it's like a Monday morning where I know I've got work to do, so I'm slowly rolling out of bed. And I'm not jumping up or anything, but I'm dozy, but I'm
Yeah.
getting there.
So when I was looking at Houston, I honestly tried to see if I could find anyone other than Şengün as an all-star, just because I like Şengün as a player. I'm just not sure if, again, he like we've talked about, if he's the reason for their success. I think the problem with Van Fleet and Jalen Green specifically is the guard depth in the West is bonkers. So if it's going to be tough for Şengün to make it as a front court, those guys as borderline candidates have almost zero chance. You have Steph, you have Jaw, you have Luca, you have Booker, you have Ant, you have who else am I forgetting?
SGA.
Kyrie,
Um, yeah, SGA, Kyrie, just guys upon guys. Like the Western Conference is just loaded with guards. De'Aaron Fox, who need to mention, even James
J
Harden to some degree,
Jalen
probably might
Williams
have
has been playing
Jalen.
good enough
Yeah,
to
the
get a
Thunder
nod.
probably have to get two, and with Chet hurt, it's definitely probably going to be Jalen Williams.
I mean, he's averaging
Um,
like 24 or something like that, so
yeah.
it's
yeah,
probably worth the nod. I mean, Norman Powell might get a freaking nod. He's averaging 25.
I mean, if Norman Powell was in the East, he probably is a starter, but in the West, he doesn't even sniff the All Star game. But in terms of Şengün, I would say that on a long car ride. It's getting a little dark out. I'm in the passenger seat and I just dozed off. Supposed to be keeping track of directions, but the eyes are heavy. Taking a little nap before we get to our destination. I think he'll ultimately get in, but not as juiced up for Şengün's first time All Star candidacy as some of the other guys. Our next guy on the list, and before y'all laugh, y'all being the audience, just want to say that this is the guy who inspired this entire conversation. I'm talking about my guy RJ Barrett of the Toronto Raptors, averaging 23, 6, and 6. Escaped the chaos that is New York City. I really enjoy watching RJ as a player. Uh, he for those who are listening and not watching the video, Haley and Jordan are both nodding off, which is I feel like is a precursor to the final conclusion we get to here. But I do just want to shout out RJ. The Raptors are one of the worst teams in the league, one of the worst teams in the putrid Eastern Conference. Is he a good stats bad team guy? He's an offensive focal point, but he can't shoot. I will say he can't shoot, but he's at least a willing shooter. And maybe it's only he only makes threes against
Does that
Boston,
make it
going
any
back to his New
better?
York
Like
days.
if you're
Yes,
if you're bad
yes.
but
See
willing,
Ben Simmons. See Ben Simmons. It can be worse.
there's layers to it. There's layers to it.
That's fair. Uh, so, um, I think the other challenge with RJ is Toronto also has Scotty Barnes, who, when healthy, is putting up 21, 8, and 8. But he's also missed 11 games to start the season. I'm not particularly a Scotty enjoyer, but competition on a bad team, there's no chance in any universe Toronto gets two All Stars. Are either of you anything more than dead ass asleep on RJ Barrett as a first time All Star?
No.
I am asleep, and I'm asleep for what you said at the beginning, that he's the best offensive player on a bad team. And like let's give NBA players their props.
Mm,
Everyone in the league is ridiculously good at the game of basketball, and when
yeah.
given enough shot attempts, some of them are going to go in. They're very good at the game. And I think you put RJ on any other team and he becomes a role player, just like we saw on the Knicks. I just don't think he's getting his usage rate is super high, and so his numbers are
Mhm.
good. Let's not get carried away here. At some point, record has to come into play, and they've
Mhm.
been terrible. And it's not it's not because the people around RJ have just been garbage. It's the whole collective team has just been not up to par. It feels like their entire team is just like you take the average of the NBA and move it a level down. Like Jakob Poeltl, decent starting center, putting up like 14 and 10. Cool. Then they got Scotty Barnes, a solid like playmaking forward, putting up 28 and 8 when he shows up. That sounds like LeBron light. Then you got RJ Barrett putting up 23, 6. Those are some decent numbers. Sounds like KD light. We're just adding light to the end of all of their comps because they're just not up to snuff with the top players in the league. And it shows by the fact that they lose like 60% of their games, or more than that, 75% of their games. So, yeah, you're gonna catch me dead ass asleep on that one.
Haley, any hope from you?
No, not at all. If RJ is an all-star, I'm gonna riot because I know that that will be at the expense of probably a not just a player I like, but it will probably be at the expense of an Atlanta Hawk, and I will be livid. Like they are underperforming, and it's not like their expectations were high. They were already pretty low, and they are not good. They're really bad. And yeah, to be fair, RJ's playing better since he's been with Toronto. I think that he's figuring it out there, but it's just good stats, bad team. And his stats are gonna level out to he's going to have some natural regression with Scotty back. Um, Scotty's going to kind of take on the primary ball handler role. Scotty's a rebound vulture, and RJ will go back to like 17, 5 and 4 or something. Which again, he's a good basketball player. I'll take him as a 3 or 4, uh, third or fourth best player on my team, but he's not an all-star. Thank you for
So
trying, Josh.
are
Better
you
luck next time.
restless? Are you restless, sleepy, or are you just full snoring?
Man, I'm like went to bed, no alarm clock, uh dead ass asleep, not planning to get up the next day. Like I have no plans to have the RJ Barrett All-Star in my future.
That's all fair. I did just want to shout him out. Despite his lack of shooting, he does get to the rim at a very good, he constantly attacks the rim, mostly because he can't shoot. But he relentlessly attacks the rim. He's a good finisher. I really like his playmaking. I feel like he had such a tough time in New York, under Tibbs and in that system. I love seeing him get a chance in Toronto. I think a good comp in terms of like situation trajectory for him would be Kristaps Porzingis. Goes to a bad team, puts up great numbers, and a good team sees him and is like, "Oh, cool, that's the piece we need." Slots in as a third, fourth option, and keeps doing what he's doing in Toronto on a good team. And but
Feels like he could
in
be
ter-
very like PJ Washington-esque, where
yeah,
PJ put up some good numbers for the Hornets and then found a new spot in
yeah,
for the Mavs, and he really stepped up when Luka was
yeah.
out, put up had some really good scoring games, which we hadn't seen much from him in the Mavs uniform, was rebounding really well. I could easily see RJ doing something like that.
Yeah, I think the best and worst thing I can say about RJ Barrett is when I was thinking of a comp for him, where he's at now is best scenario, Justice Winslow. And that is an indictment that needs no words. So in terms of RJ Barrett, I'm wide awake on RJ Barrett as a guy who can help your franchise be a third, fourth option. But I'm sound asleep with the duvet on, the fan on. I got my footy pajamas on. I'd love to see RJ get a chance, but I might be joining Haley in the ride if he gets into the All Star game. Lastly, in terms of first time All Stars who we might be sleeping on, Haley mentioned at the expense of an Atlanta Hawk. Could that Atlanta Hawk be Jalen Johnson? Big fans of Jalen Johnson over here at the Uninsured Ankles podcast, averaging nearly 20, 10, and 5 and 2.5 stocks, filling up the stat sheet. Big question is, can Atlanta get two All Stars? I think Trey is definitely a lock. One of five people in NBA history to average 20 points and 12 assists, that being Trey Young. Jalen Johnson, he's not the offensive catalyst to some of the other guys that we talked about. The Cade, I guess Mobley's not that much of a offensive catalyst, but his season high is only 29, but he's been pretty consistent. I feel like all Hawks takes, we defer to our guy Haley on those. But from my reading of the situation, Jalen's been super consistent. Hawks are up to fifth in the East. And, Jalen's a fun player to watch. He's one of the most explosive players in the league. That's the kind of guy we want to see in the All Star game. So I will start with you, Haley. Are we sleeping on your guy, Jalen Johnson, as a first time All Star?
I mean, yeah, for sure. He should be an all-star in my opinion. I actually think that Trey, as much as Trey is a lock, like we don't function without Jalen. We don't function without Dyson Daniels either, but Dyson Daniels not going to be an all-star. But we don't function without Jalen. We played the Nuggets tonight, which by the way, we're now seventh in the East because we just got our asses smoked by the Nuggets. And Jokic about put up another 50 spot, didn't play the fourth quarter and had like 48 points. So anyways, but Jalen didn't play tonight. And I think that's in like the result of the game is in large part due to the fact that he's not on the court. He does all the secondary ball handling stuff. He is the point guard when Trey's not on the floor. For the most part, we do run a couple other folks out there, but he can facilitate. He's had a couple triple doubles this year. Um, Josh mentioned his stocks. He does have that ability to do kind of the help side defense or chase down blocks and what have you, gets into the passing lanes. He's ridiculously fun, obviously. Like the switch hand dunk on oh, who was that the other night? That was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yves is on Misi. Um
Welcome to the league.
yeah, yeah. I think in all actuality, he's going to have a really tough time getting in because all the things that we've discussed. He's not going to get in ahead of Mobley, even though he's got better counting stats. But it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
put somebody in on like such an elite team. You've got to. I think that they have a good case to get in Mobley plus the two guards. But I agree with you, Josh. It's going to be really hard to put Jalen in, and I do think that they have to put Trey in. He's not even having a good offensive year in terms of scoring, but and he's putting up 20 and 12, and his assists are silly. Like,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, so
How sleepy are you?
I'm, yeah, I'm like, it's like that the period in high school right after lunch. I got a little bit of not, I got the that kind of nod, and I'm trying to stay awake because like I believe in the education that I'm getting that Jalen, but I just am not sure that there's enough sustenance to get me through that period. So I don't think
You
Jalen's
heard
gonna
it
get
here
through.
first. Haley loves the public education system.
Hey, get the teachers a raise.
Amen. But I gotta say that I'm probably in the same sleepiness level as Haley, where I've thoroughly enjoyed watching Jalen Johnson all year.
Mm-hmm.
I think my major concern is a big reason that we saw so much productivity from Jalen to start the year is because the Hawks had like five rotational players out with injuries. And so Jalen was playing like 36 to 40 minutes a night and was getting all of the point guard minutes when Trey was off the floor. And so I think his assists are a little overinflated. I think his points are a little overinflated, especially with DeAndre Hunter coming back and playing really well for the last
Mhm.
6 to 8 games since he's been back from injury. I think as as All-Star voting starts to kick in, the amazing taste of Jalen Johnson that we got at the beginning of the year is going to start to wear off, and we're going to be left with a 16 points a game, 8 rebounds, 2 stocks, 3 assists kind of stat line as the All-Star game approaches. So that's my worry for him in terms of making a team is as the Hawks get healthy, there's going to be less usage to go around. And with his usage so high to start the year, it can really only go down from here, statistically speaking, and without a massive statistical performance going into the All-Star break, he's not going to have the Hawks aren't going to have the record to get him the like auto nod or the extra viewership that someone like Mobley's going to get. So I worry that he'll probably get a snub for that reason. It's a very similar reason to why uh, Trey has been snubbed the last few years.
Mm.
Is his usage rate has been super high on a bad team for stretches. So, um, yeah, that's my concern. I think he should get in. I would love to see him in, and I think he would be fun to have in the game too. So,
Yes.
um, in that regard, I am very awake in terms of my actual percent chance of him getting in. I think it's only going down by the day unless we see a couple really big performances out of him.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I'm also a big Jalen Johnson fan. I find it hard to not be a Jalen Johnson fan. He's super versatile. And that's just one of the things that I really enjoy with basketball is guys who are super versatile, who can do everything. Um, shooting's improved. I like his playmaking. I do remember a couple of years ago, Haley was like, a guy to watch out for, Jalen Johnson, and he was spot on with that take. I think too, when you were talking, Jordan, I was thinking, so the coaches are the ones who select the all-star reserves, and the coaches are stubbornly proponents of putting in veterans. A guy we haven't mentioned that is probably going to get in is Bam. So that's another front court guy. And we already talked about Mobley and Cat and all the other front court guys getting in. And I think, unless the Hawks have a really big surge, it's going to be tough for Jalen to get in. My sleepiness, I've dozed back off after my first alarm, but I set a second alarm knowing that I'm excited to wake up for this guy. Hawks are a super fun team. And with that, I think it's a great transition to our next segment, which I've entitled Hawks Nest, to talk more about the Atlanta
Caw-caw.
Hawks. Um, you know, so the irrelevant NBA Cup, shout out Nick Swanson, saw the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers, the two best teams in the NBA, eliminated from the irrelevant NBA Cup by one, the Atlanta Hawks. And like we were kind of talking about with Jalen Johnson, Hawks are super fun. Um, are they the most fun up and coming team in the Eastern Conference? Are they the most fun team, up and coming team in the NBA? Are they a better version of last year's Indiana Pacers? Haley, as our resident Hawks fan, the floor is yours. Let's rave about the Atlanta Hawks.
I cannot believe that you ended the lead with are they better than last year's Indiana Pacers? Because
They made the conference final.
you already know the answer to that. Indiana was fake last year. They're fake again.
Indiana Fakers.
Thank you, Jordan. Anyways,
Bring it back to the
to
Hawks.
bringing it back and also to be fair, the Pacers, the Fakers are really just the 2021 Hawks. Like they just tried to be what we already did. And we made the Eastern Conference Finals prior to them with led by an undersized guard who put up really gaudy counting numbers, but he was actually winning games against real basketball players while the Pacers played a like decimated Knicks team. Like Jalen Brunson could barely move by the end of that series. All right, whatever. So all that to
I
say,
struck a
yes,
nerve, ladies and gentlemen.
the Hawks are for real. And they are like if they're not on your League Pass watch list, they should be top 5 on your League Pass watch list.
Absolutely.
I will say they can be a little sleepy at times, like tonight. If you watch them against the Nuggets, it was abysmal. But Jalen didn't play, Bogey didn't play, and you know, sometimes that's just the way the league goes. Some games are ugly. But if you watched them a couple nights ago against the Lakers, whoo, that game was fun. That
It
game was
was
a
good
lot of
basketball.
fun. Quick baby recap of that game. Jalen got in foul trouble, so we didn't get to see the best version of him or the most enjoyable. But DeAndre Hunter was a monster that
Mm.
game. I think he shot like 8 of 12, had 26, something like that. Hit a huge three, had the assist on the game-winning shot, hit a couple like really, really tough finishes getting downhill, and somehow got into it with LeBron, which was one of my favorite moments of the night because you don't really see either of them like get into it with a singular individual that frequently. And like, I don't know, not something I had on my bingo card, but um,
It looks like two bags of hot air too, if I'm keeping it a buck, but I
y-
do like to see a little bit of that tenacity.
yeah. But that there's been somebody has like stepped up, it seems like for us, at least over the last over that win streak, like somebody was stepping up every night. Trey hasn't really had it going, but he is facilitating. Josh has mentioned this a few times in our group chat, but Trey is just being more deferential, and it's not just that he's passing the ball more and getting off ball. It's that he doesn't wait for the ball to find him to start transition. He is getting up court after rebounds and not worrying about getting the ball so that he can set the tone. He's allowing Jalen or Dyson or Zach to be the guys who bring the ball up court, and that's changing the way that we move in transition. That's been a huge emphasis this year. We are beating teams in transition on the break. We're almost always ahead of our opponents in transition points. We also get more field goals. We had 25 more field goal attempts than the Cavaliers a couple games ago, which is like an absurd amount. Like you're not going to lose games or lose very many games when you shoot that many more times than your opponent. The other thing we're doing is just forcing a lot of turnovers, like the chaos that's created by Dyson, Dre, um, Zach, Jalen, like they're so long and athletic that it's hard for offenses to do the things that they want to do. It's hard to get mismatches on switches. Like you can still hunt Trey for sure, but otherwise you've got a long rangy defender running at you. And like I know Zach hasn't been the most impressive as far as counting stats go, and we've all talked about it on this pod many times. He's a real NBA player. He shows he's a professional basketball player. There's no doubt about it. And the one thing he does probably better than any other rookie is just play normal on ball and off ball defense. He's where
Mhm.
he's supposed to be all the time. He can wall up against bigger guys, and he's been just like incredibly impressive in that sense. And he's even like sometimes our defensive anchor, telling guys where they need to be in rotations, which is like, dude, he's 19. And most 19-year-olds don't know how to like properly rotate in an NBA defense. Anyways, all that to say, we're awesome. I know I haven't gone on a Dyson rant, but like the Great Barrier Thief, he took me the last pod and like wouldn't let me out for us to record, but he's continues to just do like unbelievable things on defense. So we have the Rookie of the Year in Zachary Richardson, the Sixth Man of the Year in DeAndre Hunter, the Most Improved Player of the Year in um, Jalen Johnson, and the Defensive Player of the Year in Dyson Daniels. And Josh, I don't want to hear it about Fast PP or whoever else. You can keep those to yourself. That's my awards, and I'm sticking to it.
For those that aren't aware, Fast PP is in reference to Peyton Pritchard.
Yes, context, please. Context, please.
A couple notes that I will provide is on top of Dyson Daniels' league leading 3.1 steals per game. I saw this other stat the other day that he is forcing, I think it was two and a half, a little over two and a half turnovers a game that aren't counted for as steals. They are
Mm,
just plays that they've attributed the turnover directly to his defense. And those aren't even counted as steals. And I'm like, why aren't those counted as steals? Those should just count as steals. But the moral of the story is just Dyson Daniels is, and then he is also blocking a shot a game. So he is
hmm
eliminating over 6 possessions a game. And we just think about like the number of turnovers that most teams have a game. It's normally somewhere in the like 14 to 16 ballpark. That means he's forcing almost half of a team's average turnovers a game, which is insane. And then note number two is over this win streak that they've had, I don't think it's any small coincidence that it's been on the heels of DeAndre Hunter coming back. And it was something that we as a foursome have talked about a lot that the last couple years we have just wished that DeAndre Hunter would come out of his shell and establish himself as a legitimate NBA role player. And it feels like he may have done that, knock on wood. He's averaging like 18 or 19 points over the last
Hmm.
10 games. He hasn't scored less than 15, and that's what they've needed DeAndre Hunter to be for the last like 3 years. And he's finally stepping into those shoes, which has been fun to see because I was a Hunter truther coming out of college. I thought he was going to be, a really, I thought he was going to be an all-star caliber player. But he's been anything but that to this point, just super inconsistent. And the fact that that's the thing that stood out is he's had 15 or more in like 8 straight games. That's the kind of consistency you need out of a role player coming off of your bench. So big tip of the cap to him. I think he is a major reason why they are balling out the way they have been.
Yeah, I think you got to tip your cap too to Quinn Snyder. I think it's great for the development of Risa Shea to be able to start. I know some of that was just based on Hunter being injured to start the season, and they needed a guy to start. But to have your number one pick, put faith in him, to start the season and continue to start him after Hunter came back is great for his development, in my opinion. But then convincing a veteran like DeAndre Hunter to come off the bench and excel in this bench role is not something a lot of guys take very well. So big shout out to Quinn Snyder on that. It's interesting to look through the roster. Looking back to last year, I think it's fair to say the Hawks weren't exactly a fun team. I don't know if you would co-sign with that, Haley, but there's a lot of back and forth between DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. The your turn, my turn. A lot of the stuff that before the Bucks win streak they were doing with Damon Giannis, just ISO, your turn, my turn. That's terrible basketball. But this year they're getting rid of Murray and getting Tyson Daniels back is sneakily possibly the best acquisition of the offseason. He's insane defensively as Jordan just laid out. The Hawks have 8 guys averaging in double figures. I know some of that's based on injury and having guys in and out of the lineup, but that's pretty impressive in and of itself. And then to me, two stylistic changes that I've noticed with them. Haley mentioned the one is Trey getting off the ball more. Trey historically has been a high usage, very miniature Luca like in the way he pounds the ball, spams the pick and roll, and he passes it when there's an open guy for an assist. He is getting off the ball more. He is leaning more into the Steve Nash 2.0 that I've been saying for years. one of my least favorite guys in the media, Kevin O'Connor, formerly of The Ringer, for years would say, yes, two thumbs down on him. For years was saying Trey needs to get off the ball more and play like Steph. Trey needs to play more like Steph. And I was always like, no, he needs to play like the evolutionary Steve Nash. That's the fit for his game. And he's doing that this year. And I think, two, it's allowed Jalen to get more reps. Dyson's pretty good off the ball. He's not just like a
Hmm.
defensive, specimen, kind of like, Marcus Smart has his offensive limitations, but even when he was at his best, winning Defensive Player of the Year, he was never doing offensively what Dyson Daniels was doing. You name a defensive guard who, is dominant defensively, a lot of times they're not doing something on the offensive end of the court. And Dyson's a good offensive player. So Trey getting off the ball, letting other guys attack has been great. And two, running Jalen as the screener instead of Capella, allowing Jalen to catch it in the short roll and make plays from there, I think has transformed their offense, and made them into a really fun team.
I think I
Haley, any other?
saw. Oh yeah, I guess. Oh, any other? I could go on for like hours on this. Great points on like the players that we have now. They are do all the like connectivity stuff. It's like,
Mm,
oh, I get the ball in the lane, but two guys collapse on me. I'm going to kick it out. Capella's doing better about that. If he gets an offensive rebound, he's being better about passing it out. But like Zach, Dyson, Jalen are all like that. Trey is being used as a screener, which is like I love inverted screen actions.
mhm.
That's just a nightmare to try to guard. And
It's
Trey is
so
so
hard.
sm yeah, and Trey is so smart that he knows how to read like, should I set this? Should I ghost it? Should I slip it? And he makes those reads on his own and like within the flow of the game.
I'll just note that you mentioned them playing faster. They're third in the league in pace, but they're off of first only by percentage points. So that I looked it up last year. They were their middle league average about for pace. This year they're playing way faster.
And I know that they're also shooting a lot more threes, and they're not
Mm,
necessarily shooting them well, but Quinn's just like,
yeah,
shoot the ball, shoot threes. I
yeah.
don't care. This is what we need to shoot threes, and I mean, he's leaning very much into that kind of old Houston's Rocket mentality, layups or three pointers, and getting Dre to do that is probably one of the biggest like steps in his game. He's making quick decisions to either am I going to shoot this or am I going to get downhill and not do the catch the ball, jab jab, one two dribble pull up because that's what he was like always doing last year. I do think that. Well, this is kind of two part. I think the Jalen stuff is sustainable. So we've been fully healthy for I think the whole win streak, and he had I want to say six of those games or five of those five of those 6 games he had 20 plus, and then either 9 assists or 9 plus rebounds in each of those games. So I think that that is sustainable. And I also think that the multiple, like I think Josh, you said 8 players with 10 plus points. I also think that
Hmm.
that can be sustainable. I think their numbers are going to fluctuate a little bit for sure, but that's part of what Quinn also wants. He wants the usage to be as evenly spread as it can be with like relative to the skill that we have. Jalen and Trey for sure are going to be our primary guys, but he wants Dyson to shoot the ball. He wants Zach to shoot. Bogey obviously is like that's his primary thing. Um, Dre, and he wants the big guys to do what they do well. Anyways, all that to say, I do think that that's sustainable, and I think that that's the game plan long term is to make sure that people are getting touches in their spots. So, anyways, I'm super high on what we're doing this year. That I think that win streak was maybe a little bit of fool's gold, hit the stride with everybody getting healthy, but we'll see. I'm excited about the rest of the NBA Cup. Hopefully, we can get another win against New York on Wednesday, and go from there.
I need projections. Where do we see the Hawks finishing the season? Do they win the irrelevant NBA Cup?
I think, I mean, I'm still on that hot take. With the injuries to the Magic, like there's a real
Mm,
chance we can win the Southeast, but I think sixth place is where we land in the East.
What about the cup?
I'm a little worried about how well the Knicks are playing on offense
Mm,
because they do things that we don't defend well. Like
mm.
they shoot the hell out of threes, and we don't defend that well. So I'm a little concerned about that. Also think that Cat is just a nightmare for us to match up against.
Mhm.
Um, Okongwu isn't necessarily terrible to guard him, but I think that like Clint versus Cat's not good.
It's not good. That's very bad.
Very
Barbecue
bad.
chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's like most Hawks games, it'll either be a blowout or close one at the end. The one thing is like Trey in New York, man, it's
Yeah.
just not something to mess with.
He does love that Madison Square Garden crowd. Loves to shut him up. I'd say you'd feel pretty good about taking the overs on whatever his point total is. And that will take us to the degenerate corner.
Stealing my thunder.
We are taking a look at the next couple weeks of picks. Our last 2 weeks, we had one set of picks that we hit them all. We hit them all, and we would have won so much money. We probably would have all been millionaires, except Haley forgot to place the bet. So we were left to hope and pray about the this last week's pick, and lo and behold, as projected, Josh picked the Knicks to lose again, and they won again. Which brings us to this week. This Friday, we've got Josh picking the Clippers over the Nuggets. We've got Haley's got the Suns over the Jazz. Nick has the Cavs over our favorite team to pick against, the Wizards. And I will be sipping a smidge of the Kool-Aid and picking the Grizzlies over the Nets.
You don't get any Kool-Aid.
I don't. Can I get like the condensation on like the outside of the bottle or something? Like just
You can lick the bottle. That's the best you
perfect.
get.
It's like a mirage. I just think that there's some Kool-Aid that I get to drink, but it's not there at all. Next week, the following week, we're betting on Thursday's games. Haley's got the Rockets over the Pelicans. Nick has the Thunder over the Magic. I've got the Mavs over the Clippers. I feel the need to plug our Mavs because we talked about them a lot the first like pod and a half. And then there's just been a lot of other stories going on in the NBA that everybody has, well, part of that is that Luka's been out hurt, but
Mm-hmm.
the fact is they won like I think what were they 6-1 without Luka,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just not talking about him at all. I think we need to put a little more respect on those Cavs or on the Mavs. Sorry, the Cavs have plenty of respect. They've got a little too much probably. But that brings us to the final pick of that week, which is Cat's return to Minnie. And well, we know that there's one person that likes to pick Knicks games, and I will leave him to make that pick.
Listen, the Boston New York rivalry transcends sports. Regardless of what sport, there is a Boston New York rivalry. There's also, I believe Albert Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly over and over again and expecting a different result. With that said, I may be an insane person. Because I'm going with the New York Knicks. Karl Anthony Towns in his return to Minnesota. He's going to have a huge game. I've never been the biggest Cat guy, but I am all in on Cat with the Knicks. He's been super fun, shooting extremely well, playing extremely well. Minnesota is struggling, which is also part of the reason for the pick. I know that's not good for Jordan and I's Minnesota position at the start of the year. That's for sure. But give me the Knicks. I'm breaking the streak. The Knicks are beating the Wolves, and Cats return to Minnesota. Cat with a big game, getting out of there with the dub.
Stay tuned to see if Josh can get a single Knicks game right.
Oh, well, we'll see. I feel like at this point, I'm just obligated to pick the Knicks, and it might be the reason why we don't win anything all season. But just know it could be worse. We could be picking Sixers games. All righty, gentlemen. Anything else we need to hit before we get out here?
It's time to scram.
Alrighty. Well, there's been another edition of the Uninsured Ankles podcast. Thank you for listening. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, do all the things that your preferred social media platform wants you to do. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate the listen. Until then, keep your friends tight and your ankle braces even tighter. Good night, y'all.